Hey everyone, in this video I'm gonna do a quick Photoshop training for beginners of Photoshop. If you are experienced, this might be a bit slow for you, but if you are new to Photoshop, this might be perfect. Anyways, this is what we are going to create. You can find the images in the description of the video. Okay, let's start with actually creating something. Now, I want to start with a new file so we can work from scratch. Now, let's open up Photoshop, then go to File, New, or press Ctrl N or Command N if you're on Mac. Now, for the width, I'm gonna go for 2160 and for the height to 700 pixels. This is a good size for digital products. So if you use this one, this is fine. This is actually 2 times the size of Instagram. If you want to upload your things on Instagram, this is a great size. So the other stuff we leave as it is and just simply press create. Now, there are 2 images in this project. One is called Tiger and one is called Tiger Transparent. I'm gonna use the Tiger Transparent and simply drag it in this file. This is just the tiger without the background. I already removed the background from the tiger, so we don't have to create a chapter for that. That's not for the free training. So use this one if you want. If you want to remove the background yourself, you can use the original tiger photo. I just have them in this project just in case you need the original photo. So this is without the background, and I did some lighting changes already to this. Now, first of all, if you place it here and you press Ctrl T or Command T on your keyboard, you can bring up the free transform. When you drag it in, it's automatically there. And with this one, we can resize it. Keep in mind that if you resize things, try to not go over 100%. So it's better to resize smaller and not bigger. Maybe if you go like 102% here, you can see the percentages. If it's fine, but don't go too big because you will ruin the quality. So try to keep it not too bigger than the original one. So usually go smaller, and let's try to place them there. You can see here 102%. This is fine. It's not too big. Now, once you are happy, make sure it's inside this image and not where the background can be seen here. So this is fine. Now, I have a background in this project. It's called background, and I'm simply first of all gonna select the background layer here. So if we drag stuff in our file, it's gonna place them above this one because I want to have them behind the Tiger Transparent layer. Take the background and just simply drag it in your file. Now, if you hold down Alt and you take one corner from the free transform window, it's gonna stretch it out through the center. And this is better for this one because we don't have to move it around. It's just easier to. Now, once you have the size filled, just try to find a nice spot. I would like to see these flames a bit, so I'm gonna make this even bigger and place them somewhere in the background like that. I want to have these flames a bit under his chin here and a bit next to him, something like this. Once you have that one, press enter to just place it. Now, let's move on from here and go to the next chapter to create the next stuff. At this point, you need to make sure that you save your work. So when you're creating something, every time you create something new, you can quickly save your work in case something happens. So you can see here, I have Tiger PSD. So if you haven't saved it yet, go to File, Save, Save As to save as a Photoshop file. And that way you can quickly just press Ctrl S every time you create something new and it will automatically save it. So I just did that, save it as a Photoshop file too, just in case something might happen to Photoshop, you still have your file. Now, we need to work on the background of this photo. This is a portrait from a tiger, and if I zoom in here, if I hold on Option on my keyboard or Alt on Windows, I can zoom into this photo by scrolling my middle mouse. Now you can see here we have a blurred background from this tiger, also here on the sides. So this means the focus of this tiger was on its face and the other stuff was blurred out. So we need to make sure that the background is also blurred out to make it more photorealistic. Now we have here the background layer, but I want to use the filter blur lens blur. But because it's a smart object, which you can see with this icon here, I cannot use the smart blur. So we have to remove the smart object. Now, I don't want to mess with the original layer. I want to do this on a separate layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Ctrl J or Command J on my keyboard, or you can simply take the layer and drag it here and it's going to create a duplicated version. So make a duplicated version and press right mouse on it and click rasterize layer. And this will mean that the smart object is gone. It's just a rasterized layer. And now if I go to filter blur, I can apply the lens blur. And with the lens blur, we can create photorealistic blur in the background. Now here we can set the radius, so how much blur we want. The other stuff we don't need right now, so don't touch that one. So let's play around with the radius. I think if you have it at 0, it's going to be original. If you have it at 100, it's going to be real blurred out. So I need to find some range to make it photorealistic. I'm just going to go for 50 for half of it. I think this will be fine. Now, once you have that, press OK, and it's going to apply the blur. And you can immediately see that this looks a lot better because we had this blur in the stuff around his face, and now also in the background, and it is a lot better now. It looks more real. In the background, we have these flames here, and here we have our tiger. Our most important part in this image is the tiger, obviously, but I feel like these flames in the background are too colorful. For this, it's drawing the attention away from its face. So what I want to do here is I want to have them less important in this composite or photo, however you want to call this. So let's first of all go here and let's just add some gradient, which you can find here. Now, if we change the style here to radial, it's going to make a circle, and we want to make the outer parts a bit darker, so I'm going to change this to reverse, like that. Now, the gradient here, if we click on this one, we can change the colors here. I want to keep the colors a bit brownish, like the tiger here, for instance, so you can simply click here, it will sample some colors. But obviously it has to be really dark, so it's almost to black here. I'm going to move this down somewhere there. Now, something brownish, really dark brownish. Press OK, and I want to copy this one to the other side too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it, click next to it to copy it, and just take it and drag it here. Take this one, drag it down to remove it, and take this one, drag it to the end, and that's it. Now, if we press OK, we can also change the scale here. So I want to make sure the center is still good visible. So a scale like this is fine. Press OK. And now if I change the blend mode here from normal to color, it's going to make the outer parts a bit less colorful. Obviously this is way too much, so we need to drop the opacity here. So I'm going to take the opacity here and just going to simply drag it a bit down like that. And if we compare the before and after, we get a bit less of these colors there. Now if we want to change it, we can click it again. Maybe we want the scale still at 100 or something. I can just simply change these settings here. Or if I want to change the color here, I can go back down here and eventually even play around with the settings to see how it changes this image. So let's try to maybe change it a bit like that. And copy this one again. Let's put it there. Let's remove that one and press OK. And that's it. And now we just made the background a bit less important. Now let's do it a bit more, just like that. I think this one would be fine. The next step here is to change the lighting a bit. We have these flames there in the background, so these flames will be a light source in this image. Now I already edited this tiger a bit. You can see here the left part, it's a bit darker than the right part, and I want to do this even more. So let's make this side here, especially behind them, a bit darker. So first of all, let's click on the tiger and go down here and select curves. And with the curves, we can make stuff lighter, darker. And here we have the highlights, here we have the darker tones, and here we have the mid tones. So if you change these here, it's going to change the image. So we want to make the highlights a bit darker, so I'm going to bring them down. Don't forget to press this, so we only affect the tiger, not the background. And now you can see I only affect the tiger. So we need to find a good range now. So probably something like this, maybe not too dark, just a little bit. Now this is okay. Close it. Click on the mask of it and then go to your brushes. Select the brush tool and make sure you have the soft round brush here, general brush, and keep the opacity and flow at 100 and make sure the hardness is at 0. Have black as a color selected. If you don't have here black, you can press D on your keyboard to bring it to default and then switch them. Now let's first just drop this here. So we're gonna remove some here, and a bit on his face. Let's not make it too dark. Actually, I just want to have this background a bit darker there. So I'm gonna make this lighter again, just like that. Maybe not behind his ear, just his face lighter. And this part behind this is a bit darker. As you can see here, it got darker now. You can enable, disable it. Just a bit darker area, and that's it. And now if I double click on this, I can change here the settings, maybe even darker, like that. You can also make it a bit more contrast if you want to, like that. So I think this one is fine. Maybe a bit like this. This will give all the attention more to its face and not on the background. So I think I'm gonna leave it like this. Okay, right now I want to change the color of the eye from the tiger. So I'm going to create a new layer here, and let's zoom in here. And I'm gonna take a color here. I want to make it grayish. So I'm gonna take a gray color like this, press OK, and take the soft round brush again here. Make sure the hardness is 0 and opacity and flow at 100. Now I'm gonna brush gently here inside his eye. So not the stuff around it, only inside. And not the pupil, just the stuff that's in his eye around it. Just like this. Just to make sure to fill the whole area. Now let's go to the other eye. Usually I would do this on a separate layer, but now I'm just gonna do it quickly in one layer. Just like that. And now we have gray eyes, but it doesn't look real. So we have to change the blend mode here from normal to color, and you can instantly see we changed the color of the eye. You can also play with the opacity here to make it a bit more realistic. If you drop this maybe to 90, it's gonna look a bit more real. So that's how easy you can change eyes. You can also do another color if you want. If you press Ctrl or Command U, you can click on colorize here. And if you drop the lightness a bit, it's gonna give more color, increase the saturation. You can do another color if you want, but obviously these colors don't look real. Maybe blue a bit, but I'm gonna keep mine gray. I feel like gray is kind of cool in this image. The next thing I would do to this image is to add some particles and some smoke to this from the fire. So I have a image in this project. It's called particles JPEG, and if I simply drag it in this design, it's gonna put this here. But I'm gonna make this bigger to see how this looks. First of all, let's press enter and change the blend mode here from normal to screen, so we get rid of all the black. And now if I press Ctrl T, I can simply bring up the free transform, and I'm gonna do it on this side, so not there, but maybe something like this, trying to find a nice spot here. So these are probably a bit too much, so I have to make a mask now by pressing the mask. And let's just get rid of some of these with the black brush. So I don't want to have him in its face, maybe a couple here, but not too much. So we don't want to ruin the image. This one is a bit too big. This one also. Just small little particles that are flying around to give it some illusion that the fire is still also around him. Now let's duplicate the layer by pressing Ctrl J to maybe even more fire if you want. Let's see, maybe a bit there on the bottom, like in the corner. But I'm gonna brush these particles away by taking a black brush again and making it bigger, because I don't want too much particles. I just want to have a little bit of them. Let's brush some away here, and I think this is fine. You can see it's like not much, it's just a little bit, but I feel like it gives something extra to this image. Maybe move it a bit to the right, and even like little details, I like to have them perfect. So I will remove even this one and not that one. This one also. Just a little couple particles to give this something extra. At this point, we can finish this image by doing the final adjustments. But I feel like this gray eye-ish thing, at least I'm gonna do one eye gray. So I'm just gonna go to the eraser tool and brush this side away. Just to have it like this, maybe this will be cooler to have one gray eye. All right, let's go to final adjustment. So to do final adjustments, we're gonna go click all the way up here, the last layer, and make a new layer. And if I'm gonna press Ctrl Alt Shift E or Command Option Shift E, it's gonna make a duplicated version of all the layers we have here. So this is obviously what I want, so I can finalize this. Now let's make a smart object by pressing right mouse, convert to smart object. And this way we can do final adjustment, but we can also just change the final settings. So let's go to filter, camera raw filter, and here we will do our final adjustments. Now, if your camera raw looks different, you might have an older version, but don't worry, it's all the same settings here. Now, first of all, the colors I will not change in camera raw. I can always do that later on after this. So I'm gonna do the lighting a bit here. So I want to have a bit more contrast in this image. So I'm gonna move this slightly to the right to make the blacks a bit more blacker. And let's try out these highlights, maybe a bit to the left. I don't want to have too much white tones, it ruins the image. So this one to the left. Let's try out shadows here, and I'm gonna move the shadows a bit to the right so it doesn't get too dark. Now let's see the whites again, a bit to the right so we still have some nice whites, and the blacks maybe a bit to the left like that. All right, let's move on to texture. Let's drop this a bit so we get a bit of a softer image and some clarity to keep the details of the image. Now let's move to dehaze. Do we need dehaze? Maybe a bit, so we get rid of these gray tones. Now let's move on to vibrance, saturation. If we want more color, we can obviously play with these, but I'm not sure about these. I think I would drop it even a bit like that. All right, let's play with the curves. So here we have the highlights. We can simply change these if we want. If we want more highlights, maybe we need some more highlights from the flames, so I'm gonna increase this one, and the lights slightly lighter. Then we have the darks here. We can make the image a bit more contrasted. You can see here I zoom in and out a lot to see how it looks if it's smaller and how it looks if it's bigger. Let's move on here, and this one, shadows, a bit to the right like that. Now let's move on to detail. Sharpening. This image is pretty sharp, so we don't even need sharpening on this one. Let's move on, and here I can play with the color a bit. I like this section. This is probably my favorite part because here I can change the colors. For instance, I want more red flames, so I'm gonna play with the oranges here and bring them a bit to the left, and you can see here we get a bit of a different color. Now let's try out these. We can make them like that. Take this one, would be nice. Oh, and the other stuff probably don't need because we don't really have these colors. So let's go to saturation to see how much we want of these. Maybe a bit more like that. And let's try out this one. Let's see, maybe a bit less of that one. All right, luminance, let's not touch that one. I don't really like touching luminance here. Now let's move on to vignette. Give it some vignette so we can have the outer part slightly darker because we still have a portrait here, and here we have also some vignette to even go farther, but I wouldn't do it too much. Now let's move on to calibration. Here we can do a bit creative stuff with the colors. So here sometimes your whole image can change in this section of the design. So here I also like to play around with the settings, just like that, maybe a bit less. Let's see, I think this looks pretty real. Try to keep photorealistic colors, so don't go overboard with this one. Do it slightly and see how it changes. Zoom in and out a lot and try to compare them. I think this is fine, maybe a bit more. Once you're happy with the results you got here, simply press OK and you will see the changes. This was before, this after. You can see here it looks a lot better now just by doing these final adjustments. Now you can always go back into camera. If you don't like something, you can just double click on this and you get into the screen again, and you can see here all the settings are still here, so you could change those. But I like mine, I'm not gonna change anything there. Now next thing I would do is to add a curves here to let the highlights pop a little bit more, just slightly to the left, and take the darker ones, make them slightly darker like that, so we have a bit more contrast. So I can compare this. It's just slightly a change. Now if we change this one to red, for instance, I can change the red tones here. So if I want to have it more natural, I will change even these. The green, maybe like 1 or 0. Don't need the green. Let's not do green. Let's try out blue. You can see if you move it to the right, the only place I change this is the darker part. The lighter part I don't touch, so only this part. Probably we don't even need this one, maybe one. So this is fine, close it. Now the next thing is to add some color balance, so we can adjust the colors a bit. If we want to make sure everything is balanced right, I just move these from left to right and see, is it better or is it worse? Maybe a bit of a bluish. Let's see, you can barely see this, maybe one, and that's it. This all depends on your image, of course. Now some final step is to add some color lookup, to add some LUT to this to get a bit more different colors. You can see here I changed the color by adding a tree strip, but this is way too colorful, so let's drop this to maybe 20, just a bit extra. I'm gonna even do it 10. I don't want to do it too much. All the other courses, so check out the courses on my website, and if you would like to join, be my guest and learn more in Photoshop. So thank you for watching.